Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, so if you are new to the channel, I feel like this is the best way to go about the summary of this car and what I'm doing. This is my 2007 G35, or what's left of a 2007 G35 at this point. I'm doing some upgrades right now, which I'll quick go over, but I wanted to say I wanted to try something different, and I always wanted to do like more of an import or IRS and stick shift, and I knew that I wanted to get at least not like a T56 or not one of the real expensive transmissions, and I had heard about the CD09s. People with Turbo Supras are putting them in as an upgrade. I have tuned a bunch, probably over 50 cars with CD09s in them that are LS or Turbo LS. And I had a lot of, I was like, man, I would drive the car on the dyno and I'm like, what trans is in this? It shifts really nice. Did you buy a TR6060? No, it's a CD09 with a Collins adapter or LOJ or whatever. And the farther I got into a bunch of my other projects, the more I wanted to do something different. And I had my son was pretty young at that point, so we had a new baby boy, and I knew I would not have the time to dedicate into a build. So at the same time, I was like, why don't I treat myself, since I build everything, engine mounts and everything normally, and I forego a lot of creature comforts to complete a project faster, stay on budget, all of the above, right? You have a crappy car with a lot of power, if something happens to it, whatever. So I was like, wouldn't it be neat to do a G? I don't mind G's at all. I think I don't really know a whole lot about them. Now I know a little bit, but obviously all I know is LSG stuff. All of this combined, and after talking to, I was going through a bunch of different swap kits. I was just going to buy a kit because I didn't have time, and I was like, I'm going to see how the other side lives, right? How does a bolt-in kit work? How well does it bolt in? Is everything functional? And I looked at the LOJ stuff, the oil pan, engine mounts, and I was going to do the rest. And as I progressed through his kit on the page, and I found out that he has a CAN bus translator, and it plugs in, and he has a drop-in harness. Literally everything plugs into it. Everything's 100% functional in the car. Everything works the way it is, as if GM and Nissan built this car and handed it to you. You could just go to a showroom and buy it. And all of that was very attractive. So the farther up into his kit I got, the 100% integration and everything else came into play. So I'm like, well, I'm getting his accessory drive, I'm getting his harness, I'll just buy literally everything. Clutch, I'll ask him, what is it missing? What do I need? And I bought his ultimate swap kit with every nut and bolt. And I have pictures. What I'll try to do is lay it out, and I have the entire kit, and I did it in less than 2 days with his bolt-in kit. I think I had like 18 hours total into it. I did it in a weekend. So I went looking for a decently clean G. We found one in the marketplace not that far away. My friend picked it up for me, Matt Amy, and brought it over here. It had a serious rod knock, but the transmission and everything was great. The rest of the car is very nice. There's some paint defects, but largely this car is way better than most of the ones I've ever seen. The subframe and everything underneath is very clean. You know, he definitely didn't go... If he did off-roading, it was very light. We'll put it that way. So it ticked all the boxes. Mainly, I was most worried about getting a transmission that didn't have, like, obliterated third. So I was like, well, on top of that, might as well put everything into the car, because I hear that the diff, axles, everything else are fairly robust in this too. It'll make a fun car to smash around. So what I'll do is we'll put the rod that's making noise out the block with a nitrous kit, courtesy of Nitrous Outlet. I was like, hey boys, want to spit a rod out of this thing? And they were like, yep. So they sent me a kit, and as I gathered the rest of the parts and prepared for the swap, I was going to take this to the dyno and scatter it and meet my friend there with a trailer so he could bring it home. And funny enough, the day I go to take it to the dyno, it had rod knock. There's videos of me introducing this car, driving it around with a nice healthy hammering sound down low. So the day I take it to the dyno, I barely get down my street here and it sounds like it's going to come apart. So I abort mission and I call them and I'm like, I don't even think I'll make it to the dyno, so this won't be fun at all. Part of me in my head knows already what's going to go on, so that's what annoys me when I talk about stuff like this, because we're not going to get... It's already so hurt that we're not going to make any good power, and it's going to come apart, and it's going to be very lackluster. Anyway, I blew it up. I pulled it apart. There was a piece of the rod on the cross member. I swapped it real quick. I got everything going. It took a little bit to get the AC charged. A bunch of the AC lines ended up blowing out, and then I bought replacements, and then they didn't fit. Apparently this is a funny year car where, or I just don't know Nissans that well, and I got stuff that didn't fit a few times. Anyway, air conditioning, everything fully works. It has a 2008 4.8 liter out of a GMC Savannah van in it with approximately 244,000 when I did the swap. I put a sloppy stage 2 in it. I put Pac 12 18s in it. This was a 0848 with 799 heads. It had those on it. And I tuned it on the stock computer with a flex sensor, and it made like 343. It made, I think I pushed it to 348 or 352 rear wheel. But it was diminishing gains. I ended up backing it to about 331 to the tire for street use and abuse. And I drove it around like that. And to be totally honest, I was really upset with the swap because the car itself got pretty good traction as it is. And it would like barely spin first unless you were really trying. I think also part of that was the subframe is so loose in these cars that it would move so much that it would help with traction. And I was pretty annoyed how lackluster it was. I mean, mostly what people do is they go straight to a crate LS3 in these cars. That's 110 pounds lighter than this is, and, you know, makes much more power. So I think that's where they're happy. They got tons of torque, way more than stock, the reliability, parts, everything else. My plan was to do all motor as a research study, spray, and then I was going to do some sort of blower, like an A&A kit or something for a Corvette, because this takes Corvette accessories since the front end is so shallow. And one of my friends was like, I have an LSA blower. And I was like, you know, I wanted to mess with one of those a bunch of times. I've talked about it so much. That's it. We're just going to do it. Because this car has fairly short gears and a short ratio trans. All of it combined is to help the fairly anemic V6. So with a supercharged V8, it would be a total handful, and that's what I wanted. I didn't want to put super long gears in or tame the car down at all. I wanted something that would be pretty raunchy, so that's why I was upset when it wasn't very wild at all on motor. On spray, it was okay, and then even still, I was like, man, this blower better be night and day, or I'm still going to be very upset. And it was definitely night and day. I was very happy to put the blower on. Initially, it made, on part of my conservative tuning, it made about 570 to the tire, 505 foot-pounds. One of the things I did do then was, I had some tuning problems with the E38. I'm not very good with Gen 4, and I feel like whenever I get a Gen 4 ECU vehicle of my own or my friends, sometimes they haunt me. They will not do what I want them to do. Other people can tune it, no problem, doesn't seem to have the issues. I never could get it to be exactly how I wanted and drive how I wanted. So on and so forth. Another test that I did was I put 706 cylinder heads on, smaller cylinder head, and I lost a tiny bit of torque down low, but I picked up 30-40 rear wheel with no other changes. Another thing that I did was I swapped this car. Since I'm in cahoots with Holly, I'm a partner with them, and I do stuff and research, and they give me things to show you guys. It's really cool. I enjoy it quite a bit. They gave me a Terminator X for this car, which I was very happy to do because I was so annoyed with the E38. So I put the Terminator X in, drive-by-wire, Nissan pedal. Everything's working great. I'm missing air conditioning. My tack doesn't work, and my coolant temperature gauge in the dash does not work. But LOJ and I are also working on a Holley CAN bus box to get all that back. I was not going to put the Holley in and permanently get rid of my air conditioning. Everything's there and working. So that's the whole overview plan there. During this entire upgrade process, I have swapped like throttle bodies, injectors, done a lot of testing, done many different ECUs, operating systems as far as stock computer, bunch of E38 stuff, Corvette OS, truck, Silverado, like all sorts of things, trying to get what I wanted out of it, and then eventually put the Holley in. And it is on flex, and it has the Holley. It's partially taken apart right now. It has had the same clutch the entire upgrade process, and I knew that it would not be friends at all with the blower. And then when I had the blower on, it was doing surprisingly well, right? So I have left it on as an experiment, so to say, how far will it go? Also, I have the stock modified LOJ pump and basket, and this is a funny saddle tank returnless setup. And eventually I was way out of fuel, obviously. I detuned it slightly. And then I went to a booster pump that one of my awesome viewers sent in. I hooked up the booster pump. That did help out. I was still losing pressure, but it was okay. It wasn't like in danger. It's running on E85. It does go slightly lean up top. It has trouble keeping up, but it's right at a point where it's not a huge concern, right? So then I had done some research on a Holley brushless pump and worked with it on my Mustang, which I want to do results on too. I swapped it in and out in the Mustang and did a lot of testing with it. I put a brushless in here, Holley sent, and it barely helped me out on fuel, which I was kind of surprised with, obviously. And after I talked to LOJ, he's like, do you still have the stock feed line? And I'm like, yeah, isn't it like 3/8? It has a 3/8 clip, right? And he goes, no, the clips are approximately 3/8, but the line itself necks down to 5/16 or smaller in most of the spots on the car, and it is returnless, so it's venting most of the fuel in the hat before it even gets to the line to the front of the car. So I'm like, okay, I'm out of clutch. Okay, I'm out of fuel. The other thing is LOJ has developed, this is a 6-rib accessory drive. It uses Corvette balancer, LSA water pump, a bunch of other mix and match, and then his block. And what it does is it puts the stock Nissan accessories in the stock location, so all the stock lines work. So I never had to disconnect my AC, which is funny because I had to disconnect my AC because the lines didn't hold pressure. Anyway, the blower is 8-rib. So he built an upgrade kit for people that are pushing this platform, namely he and I, and for future customers, where you convert it all to 8-rib. And he has procured 8-rib stuff, pulleys and everything else that similar matches. He machines the stock power steering pump to fit. I'm going to show a whole thing. I want to do a whole video where I pull the front end off and go entirely 8-rib, because that's a whole subject on its own, and I haven't done it yet, so I don't know, you know, till I do it, I want to show everybody. But yeah, I'm going to convert the car to 8-rib, fuel, and clutch. So those are the 3 majors. The other day, I tried to do 100,000 subscriber. I was going to do, honestly, blow these tires off and hopefully knock my bumper off the car. And I barely got into it, and the clutch was like, no thanks. I thought it would be okay, like I had mentioned. With just spinning the tires, there isn't much resistance on the clutch, but I had to be a cool guy and jump on the brakes and try to walk the car around. And I think just the brakes were just enough to slide it enough, and then me just thinking that it was spinning, wondering why my diff is acting funny. By the time that all happened, I had 0 clutch left. It was just time to go. So the cool thing is I did videos of this entire progression. It did make about, like I said, conservatively 330 on motor, and then I sprayed it. I maxed the kit out. What a lot of people don't know is the kit, the feed line, and the jet itself are always the limiting factor on a nitrous kit. So I sprayed up until it wouldn't gain any more. It was almost into the 500 range. I think maybe a little bit more. Honestly, I'm struggling to remember that. So I have all the nitrous videos, show that. I show I'm using the stock ECU, and I'm using a WinMax window switch, combination RPM, everything. From nitrous outlet, that worked fantastic. A bottle heater, everything else. And then I went to the blower, and then I was going to spray on top of my blower, but then I realized my fuel situation would not allow that. And then I thought that I would put the brushless in and then be able to spray again, and I'm still not there. And then my clutch was like, I'm like, well, I'm gonna burn my clutch out of the car again, whatever. So there's a bunch of things I wanted to change, and what's nice is it kind of forced me into all of it. I did order a Clutch Masters FX 1000. It is special for this car because of the adapter plate and flywheel. So it's an entirely new flywheel, twin disc clutch, everything else. It holds over 1,000 horsepower. I think it's even 1,300 or something obscene. So that's all going to go into the car. I'm going to change. I have a tank in the back, a water tank, and pump system and everything for the cooler. And it holds almost 10 gallons, and it bothers me that it's so big. I'm not a big fan of the trunk tank. I tried it. We tried icing it down in the dyno. It made almost no difference at all with completely iced down water. I had a G8 with a blower, and it had a very small reservoir and a big thin heat exchanger, and the temps would go up quickly, but they would also fall quickly, and the amount of water that was in it was nil. It was easier to manage. It wasn't taking up a giant portion of my trunk. I'm going to get rid of the trunk mount kit, and I'm going to mount... I was looking at a bunch on eBay and also talking with like Monkey Fab and some other people about maybe making a custom tank. I think it might be a waste of their time to build me a custom tank when there are nice ones on eBay. They have the filler neck and everything, and they're 1 inch, and there'll be a nice big surface area, and I can hang it to a point where I can drill a hole and still do the fill cap, and then mount the pump in the bumper, and then my whole trunk will be available for golf clubs and things like that, or nitrous bottles. So, with all that being said, as it was incredibly fun to drive. It was extremely reliable. My wife and I, for the longest time, I was hesitant to do these upgrades because the car was so good the way it was. You could just get in it, start it, literally beat the pants off of it. I have tons of videos of me doing that. I would show them all the time and be like, people would be like, why don't we see the G? I'm like, well, my wife's getting her nails done. She took the G and she's spinning them through 4th gear through an intersection somewhere between here and that place. So I dreaded even just working on it, but now what's nice is now that it's the transmission, the clutch was broken, burned. I'm like, okay, I can take it apart and I can do all the stuff that I kind of rushed through. Take my time, go through it all, do all that stuff, twin disc fuel lines, do the blower stuff, 8 rib, air to water, revamp. It's my first go at like the whole custom LSA, water tank, everything else. After doing it, I have stuff that I like and don't like. So now with that mindset, I know what I want to change and where I want it to be. So that's the whole overview for this thing. There is the entire playlist for this thing, everything I've ever done to it and on the dyno and everything else. But I figured this would be a nice summary. What will we say? This is the second wind for this thing, or the 5th wind, because it was just a G, and then it was an LS, and then it was nitrous, and now it's blower. And with any luck, we'll see how far this blower can go, because it wanted to make more power than 650. I just noticed the dyno is feeling funny. The RPM, I feel like I'm spinning my clutch. And then we hit it once more, and you could just smell it. It was bad. So we're like, okay. I pulled timing and power and everything out of it, just been driving it and trying to catch up on everything. I've been messing with the truck. I'm still collecting parts for the Mustang. All of that. Many projects at once. And this was just get in and beat up. Why take it apart? Again, I think I said that 7 times. So, yes, I want to front mount the air-to-water setup. I'm going to do 8 rib. The balancer I have is slightly overdriven. We're going to push a little bit more power. Oh, Lance Drager, he has a business card over there. He's a guy that does a lot of LSA stuff. He has worked for or does a lot of stuff related to LSAs. And one of the things we are going to test is I'm going to use the Holley to... There's a solenoid on the car that can disable the bypass valve or open the bypass valve to eliminate boost in like a limp mode situation. And people have done it, but we want to get working tables for Holley. Say I'm pulleyed for 17 pounds and I have 6-speed and I can't use 17 pounds till 4th or part of 3rd, because this thing will just blur 1st through 4th like it doesn't exist. And one thing you can do with that is you can do gear-based, you can pulse width that solenoid and lower the boost and lower gears and make the car more traction oriented. So that's what we're going to test. I got that from him. I just reminded myself that I'm a scumbag and didn't let him know. I have it and I'm going to do it, except for I broke my car. So it'll be a little. So all of that's going to happen. The fuel system is going to get upgraded. I want to do a 1/2 inch or an 8 feed, hit a regulator, probably a PQY, and then return on the stock feed. I'm going to modify the stock hat, yada, yada, yada. It's still going to keep the brushless. What I'm interested in is seeing how much injector I might have left with the brushless. If I have some left, it would be cool to put a small shot of nitrous on it to help out with the inlet air temps, right? So a small shot, now that the twin disc is on it, fuel system, everything else, all of that will come into play. And hopefully by the time it gets hot outside, the air conditioning and everything will be working with the conversion box from LOJ. Those are all the plans. I made a mess of my wires when I threw the Holly in one day, and I've just been driving it. I never cleaned anything up. It's just too much fun to drive. So I'll quick show around, and that's it. And that's where we at. That's where we are with this car. So that's the cumulative update and where we're going. And all of the stuff I already have for it. The clutch is on the way. I have all of the 8-rib stuff. I have plenty to do. I've been working on it a little bit every day. Transmission's almost out. I will obviously show how badly damaged this clutch is once it's out. And then we'll go from there. So I will pop this thing loose and we'll do a quick walk around. Okay, here we go. Walk around. So what we got here is 07 G35. You guys would know better than me. Is this like there's like a Sport and a Grand Touring and something else. This car was not a Brembo car, but it is leather. I think most of the Infinitis are, aren't they? Since they're the luxury Nissan Infiniti, whatever. I did do Brembos in the front. I did not do Brembos on the back, because people say if you're going to put a smaller, like a shorter tire on, you end up putting the smaller brakes on anyway. So that's a factory 19, and these are the 19s. You definitely need the 19 for the big brakes, but if I ever wanted to put a Mickey Thompson or something on it, you want to keep that. So here is a viewer supplied air-to-water tank. What an awesome dude. That's what I've had in here. These are the hoses. This is the infamous red industrial Home Depot garden hose. And that's my pump. So I was pumping up under the car into my blower and into my air-to-water mounted down here. And like I said, this is a 2008 4.8 GMC Savannah van. It used to have 799s. It has a sloppy stage 2. It has pack 1218s. It has stock everything else. Literally everything else is stock. Stock plugs, wires, everything you can think of. So here is the... Let me get you a little Milwaukee boy. This is the LOJ drive setup. As you can see, this is a LSA water pump, and he uses the bolt locations that normally hold the separate blower belt on the front to hold his little catch block here that does all the belt routing. So under there is the stock alternator location. Up here is the stock power steering pump location. These are the stock lines connected to it. This car is not that bad to work on. You'd be surprised. There are some things that are tight, but it is way easier than a 4th gen Camaro. And I would say I've never really worked on a CTSV, but I've seen the engine bay. Don't want to touch that. It's not bad to work on. You can get all the plug wires and stuff swapped out. It seems tight in some spots, but it's really not that bad. And like I said, this is a LS3 Corvette, and this is all 6-rib, his stuff. And then this is an Olson Custom Works blower modification where he back cuts it, puts this pulley on for 6-rib. It has 8-rib, so the other LOJ block and everything is wider. The other balancer is 8 rib, it's specific. We'll talk about that. It's like a Holden Special Vehicles. Because normally what happens, guys, if you don't know, 4 rib AC back here, 6 rib accessory, and then there's an 8 rib blower belt by itself usually, or 10 rib on some cars. And then some cars have just the entire, I think like LS9 Corvette, the whole thing is 10 rib or something like that. All the accessories are expensive as hell, have a super wide belt. So what's nice is I plan to spin it a little more, and I might even get the blower ported if I have the fuel and clutch and everything else, obviously. So instead of having any capacity, you just try to ruin everything, if you didn't know. So all that 8 rib stuff is going to go on. There's the stock AC down there, a 4 rib boy. And then this is a 2011 ZL1 Camaro blower and lid. It's already been modified. It's already been reinforced. It already has like the, I think these are 12s, 12 AN jobbers on there. Normally they're like a weird push lock from the factory. Like I said, I don't know a whole lot about LSAs, so it's been neat to have a partial LSA / whatever muddied up conglomerate here. Other than that, I currently have the Snake Eater 92 drive-by-wire. I have FIC 1000s in it now. I've done 4 or 5 different injectors. I got tired of reaching in here and swapping them, so it has FIC 1000s in it right now. I had so much trouble getting this thing to be happy on stock computer that I changed injectors and throttle bodies and all sorts of stuff. We even welded in a MAF. My buddy at Area 1320, we put a stock mass air meter in here. I tried to make it run nicer. Almost nothing I could do. I was so annoyed, and then I just threw the Holly in. I've been so happy with that. So again, shameless plug, but man, it's been way better. All I'm doing is waiting for the air conditioning stuff. Other than that, you can see more of this under here. There's the LOJ pan, 7-quart steel pan. What a beast. This thing has, whose fans are these? Does it say on them? Ron Davis or something like that? I can't remember. It's his entire radiator and fan package. Like I said, I just got everything. I didn't want to have to question anything. And the most amazing thing about LOJ's kit is everything fit. Everything was perfect. All the literature was perfect. All of his parts bolt in perfect. So there's my water lines. They're partially hanging down now. I'm cutting everything out. There's the tranny almost out. This has Cook's long tubes that I welded V-bands, and I put my stock-ish eBay stainless 2 1/4 inch cap back on, which is standing up in the corner here. And it has a stock diff and stock axles. One thing I would like to mention is, yeah, this thing drove all sorts of funny, and then my buddy Derek sent me all the bushings for the back end, and then another guy actually sent me a second brace, which I should put that on while I'm tearing everything apart. So there's only one stud for the diff, and then the thing that he gives you adds a second anchor point. Like I said, I'm not drifting and I'm not drag racing it. I'm mostly on limited traction, so I wasn't going nuts with all of those upgrades. One of my friends was cleaning out his garage and gave me a spare diff. I have thought about just building this ahead of time as a spare, maybe doing like a limited slip or something in it, but haven't needed it. The thing has been incredible, really. So this thing has like heated leather, power seats, sunroof, everything. It's not bad. Not bad at all. It's been a really fun car. I really know, now I know why people really like these cars. I think they've held up remarkably well for what they are. It has 150 on it. It's like 140,000 something. I took the battery and everything out, otherwise I'd key it on, but it's almost 150,000. I'm just impressed with, like, I mean, obviously some people took care of it, but the seat's not cracked. The dash has a little bit of a crack in it. Not too big of a deal. Everything else is so nice. It drives nice. It's fun to drive. You sit in a good spot. It's very driver oriented. I feel like the car is really neutral. Like you've seen it, you might not have seen. I've posted videos of me like power shift fourth and spin the tires and almost opposite lock the wheel. And it's very neutral. It's very easy to drive. It's fun to drive. I'm pretty surprised. Other than it needing 650 rear wheel for me to think it was viable and fun. That's how ruined I am. It has been very incredible and reliable and a surprise. And the transmission, just, you can just smash all that power and it just doesn't care. It's really, it's had 600 rear wheel for probably a year and a half, and it does not ever get treated nice. And if you watch some of the videos, I do 1, 2, 3, 4 spinning. I'll shift fourth while it's spinning, and then what's funny is it'll hook and like bog sometimes, and then that's obviously really rough on drivetrain parts, and no problems. So I'm excited to see if I make it better or worse with all these upgrades. And then I also think, we'll see, I think this might be the final year for this car. A lot of people are interested in it. I did a lot to it. I kind of need to make room. I have so many other projects and stuff that I'm doing. So it's one of those things, right? Is this the one we keep or whatever? I guess we'll figure that out, but that's the whole update with everything else and where we are. Once I get the transmission out, I'll show that. Once I get the clutch, I'll show that. Once I install it, you know, we'll show that. I got my 8-rib kit over there for it. And then I'm working with Monkey Fab. He sells all the fuel stuff. I'm gonna figure out exactly what fuel stuff I need and want, and then get all that ordered from him. Put it all in here, share the results, and then what we want to see is a overhead on the fuel system so we can spray the rest of it, right, boys? So that's where we are with this thing. I'm really happy with it so far. It almost it has been so reliable and so good that it's almost you almost don't think about it, like, that car, whatever. But then you drive it and you roach off like all 4 gears and you're just like, man, this thing is just, it can go, you can drive it so nicely. And you can, prior, you could have the AC on, the windows down, in high gears at low RPMs. It would cruise very nice. Obviously with the blower, it has outstanding torque down low. Any gear is usable in the whole 6-speed. Some of you might not know, the CDO9 5th gear is 1-to-1. A lot of newer transmissions are like this, so they can run a taller gear and still be pretty aggressive in first. But yeah, it's just totally ridiculous, this thing, with the tire spin and the amount of power in every gear. It has very similar to a 355, like a 350 something rear gear. That's a 27.5-inch tall tire I have in the back, taller than stock. And it does, in 5th gear at 7,100, I believe it does 160 or 166, which is past the top of the speedometer. So it'll pin the speedometer in 5th, which it does with little effort. I forget what the other gears do. First is like only like 20 miles an hour or less. It's really short. It's remarkably short. It's comically useless. You can pull out in 2nd or 3rd without much struggle, even with the kind of bitey single disc clutch that's in here. 2nd, again, it's just all wheel spin fest. I believe it goes like 75, 25, 75. Then it does like 99 or 103 in 3rd, 125 in 4th, 160 something in 5th. And then obviously my dyno can't read if I pin 6th. I'm not really interested in pinning 6th in this thing. Mathematically, it probably goes well into the 200s, like 205, 210. But can't think of anything else I would share. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Other than that, this thing has been fantastic. Lots of fun. Very rewarding to build. Awesome to get a bolt-in kit that literally bolts in. Like I have never worked on one of these cars, and I threw this thing in, and it took me so long to rip out all the stock stuff because I'm so used to like sawzawing my AC lines and being reckless. And I'm like, okay, what do I need to keep? And I have to kind of be gentle. I can't rip connectors off. All these accessories I'm going to be reusing, kind of thing. And then since I blew the motor up, like you couldn't turn it, it was a little bit of a thing. That was more difficult than putting this in with the LOJ kit. So I just wanted to say that. Fantastic kit, fully integrated, everything else. One of my friends did a similar swap, bought a bunch of LOJ stuff, and then did the Terminator right away. So incredible stuff. So again, let me know if you have questions, thoughts, concerns. If you have suggestions for some stuff, that would be cool. I think I got all of my stuff made up and ready to rock here. But yeah, again, I don't know everything. So some of you guys might be like, just do this or do that, or someone sells something or anything I missed. So thanks. Hopefully this isn't, well, I don't think you guys really care if they're too long, so we won't discuss that. Hope you enjoyed everything. Let me know what you think of this car. I like it. It's been lots of fun.